Hello, I am Mickey. I am not your mama's minister, and since it is my birthday month, I am going to do a little bit something or a little something that I've wanted to do, kind of shied away from, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. So, there are a number of movies out there that include fortune tellers and psychics and witches and all of those things. And people will ask me, so what did you think of this? Or so what did you think of that? And so I'm going to kind of give my take on what I think about these very popular in some cases, very popular in some cases, not so much. I'm going to go ahead and start today with Practical Magic. And I have a very good reason why I'm starting with Practical Magic. So in 1998, I believe it was that it came out. Um, when it came out, I at the time I was involved in a forum online um, that was for pagan practitioners and so forth, and it advertised as being something that was all inclusive. And so one of the gals that did movie reviews on there did a review on Practical Magic, and she had some issues with the film, and I have some issues with the film as well. But her issues didn't hold water when it came to her complaints about it. And so let's go ahead and start. And so the first thing was um, she had a huge issue with the aunts killing the bird. And she said, well, pagans don't kill animals for sacrifice and so forth. This is just a further example of how we are maligned in the media and so forth and so on. Actually, there are a number of pagan religions, pagan spiritual practices, and non pagan, so major religions that have practiced animal sacrifice and offerings to God and to the gods. And so that's not really the truth. When it comes to kind of being black and white, you need to remember that by grouping everybody in and making a general statement like that pagan groups don't practice animal sacrifice, then you are saying, oh, well, all pagan groups believe the same way that I do, which of course isn't true. And her other complaint was, let me see if I can remember. Yes, the sisters bringing Jimmy back from the dead. And she said, witches don't bring people back from the dead. This is just a misunderstanding of old texts, and this didn't really happen, and this is bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. And so she just really had an issue with that. And so, what ended up happening was I responded to her article and I disagreed. I said, listen, let's go ahead and start with the birds. And, talked about the fact that a number of different paths practice animal sacrifice and offerings. And then I talked about the bringing Jimmy back from the dead. And I said, not only do we have the major holy books talking about bringing people back from the dead, but in addition to that, we have old documentation and so forth where they believed that whatever it was, whether it was the local witch or the local shaman, the local priest, the exorcist, whoever it was that brought somebody back from the dead. Now, we can go all scientific, which I love going all scientific, and say, based on Jimmy's physique and with how much belladonna was put into the tequila that Sally was giving him to drink, I'm gonna bet that he was just probably really close to being in a coma, a drug induced coma. But okay, let's say for the enjoyment of the film, he actually was dead and they brought him back with a spell. That's not maligning pagans in any way. First of all, nothing in Practical Magic talks about spiritual paths. It talks about mystical paths. It talks about magical practice. And so, leaving out the religious aspect of it or the spiritual aspect of it, you then are taken to a place where you can just look at the possibilities rather than including any type of morality or anything like that. And so it is entirely possible, based on what we know from mythology and from what people talked about, it's possible to bring people back from the dead. Doctors do it all the time, and sometimes people do it just with CPR. And so, to sit there and say that that's not possible and that's kind of giving a false idea of what witches are is kind of giving a false idea of what witches are. And so, let's see. And then there were other issues. So let me give my, and oh, so anyway, after I wrote that response, they ended up 86ing me from the forum and from the website. I was very disappointed and very offended. And so I've kind of shied away from the movie reviews since then. And so this is going to be fun. So, my opinion on Practical Magic, first of all, I'm not a huge fan of Sandra Bullock as an actress. I think that in her personal life she does some lovely things, but as an actress, she's not one of my favorites. I love Nicole Kidman, and thought her performance in that was hysterical. And so the movie is something that I've watched over and over again. I don't watch it frequently, but I definitely have seen it many times. I enjoy it. I love the soundtrack. It, very connected to the fact that this family, the Owens family, is just using a lot of practical magic, which if you get a chance to read the novel, you absolutely should, because it definitely sticks to that practical magic idea, that the magic that we do in our daily lives without pulling out all of the candles and the trappings and so forth and so on, which they do occasionally do, but it's more of just a natural state of who they are, how they live their lives, generations upon generations upon generations. Um, my So definitely read the book if you get a chance to. Alice Hoffman is a wonderful writer, and it's very enjoyable, and it's a longer time span than the movie was able to get. So the movie, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the acting, but there were a few things that I took issue with. And the first one starts at the beginning, and that is that the ancestor cursed herself and her bloodline, that any man, now, or the original spell was so that she would never fall in love again. She would never feel the pain of being in love again. Okay, very simple spell work to do. And she is a since birth practitioner. So this is a lineage type of teaching. And so this woman is experienced. She knows what to do. She casts a spell on her so that she will never fall in love again. Fine. That's absolutely fine. Then it mutates into a curse on her entire bloodline, that any Owens woman, if any man loves an Owens woman, then he's going to die. So the curse is not necessarily on the Owens women, it's on men who love Owens women. Because what about the men who love these chicks and the chicks don't love them back? So I had a whole problem with, because yes, can we fuck up spells? Absolutely. The most experienced practitioners can still fuck up spells. And so I don't have a problem with the fact that it fucked up per se. I have a problem with the way that they did that. Um, Maybe changing it to where any man that an Owens woman falls in love with will die. So that was my first issue. My second issue was actually something that was left out of the book, just touched on in the movie, and that was the gal coming to the aunts for the love spell. It's so um, necessary to the story, at least in the film, because the girls, that starts Jillian off on her excitement of falling in love, and then it starts Sally off on, I don't ever fucking want to feel like that I feel the necessity to, stab a bird in the heart. And so it really sets off their journeys for their future, and yet it leaves out huge parts of the story. For example, the gal that comes to the aunts is much younger. She's in her early 20s, I believe. maybe late teens. And it is a huge, long process because after the spell works, that the aunts do, and he becomes obsessed with her. He absolutely becomes obsessed with her to the point that it's killing her. He stalks her. He's with her all the time. He wants to be with her all the time. She basically gets what she asked for. And after that, she keeps coming back to the aunts. You got to fix this. You got to, and they keep telling her, mm-mm. And so seeing the after effects of what the gal wanted, what she wanted. She came to the aunts for this love spell. She got the love spell. She got exactly what she asked for, but she didn't realize what she was asking for. And so the after effects of what happened to her with this spell was really important to the story, and yet it was left out. And so that was my second issue. Was that two? I think that was two. And then my final issue with the film was uh, the gathering of the PTA group. Now, I don't like bullies, and if you read my things, if you watch my videos, that's my biggest pet peeve is bullying. I hate bullying, and so for me, seeing these children at the beginning that are bullying the sisters um, is bad enough. But then you see the PTA meeting, and then at that point, and the phone tree meeting, and at that point, you see that all of these women have grown up to be just as bullying. And so everybody knows that no, the sisters are kind of the, typhoid Mary of the community, and yet um, the aunts make the suggestion. Now, the aunts are established practitioners. I mean, they had just gone for a weekend for a full moon or something like that ritual. And they're experienced practitioners. But Jillian gets possessed by Jimmy. And the aunts say, "Do you know 12 people or 13 people?" So she calls in the phone tree. Now, these women, the only reason that they're showing up is out of curiosity. They finally get to see what the witches are doing in their private lives, what they live like. Do they have babies in the living room in cages? So they get to see that. And that's the only reason that they're showing up. And so Jillian's future, Jillian's life, is completely dependent on these bitches who are bullies, who have not grown up at all, and who are just there out of curiosity. Well, curiosity is not going to get the job done. It might in a some sort of miraculous manner, but the aunts just got back from a weekend with a bunch of other people who were established practitioners as well. And you mean to tell me that these aunts are such dipshits that they're not going to call in the pros to do an exorcism? No, they're going to get the fucking PTA bitches. I don't believe it for a second. So that was my third issue with the movie. Those were the three primary issues that I had with the movie. Other than that, I really loved that they did kind of, especially with the aunts, they showed that practical magic lifestyle. They showed that it wasn't anything that they thought about. It was just a part of who they are. It has become through these generations, it has become the lifestyle that the Owens women live. And so for them, it's nothing. It's not like it's not like they think about, oh, I'm going to be all witchy today. It's just who they are. They reach for the belladonna for this, or they reach for the mandrake for that. They reach for the bird for that. It's just commonplace as putting your socks and shoes on. And so I really enjoyed that about the movie. The aunts were amazing. But what do you expect from Stalker Channing and Diane Wiest? West? However you pronounce it. Diane West? Wiest? Psh, I don't know. And so then I totally lost my train of thought. Oh, and so then we look at the the fact that we've got this wonderful, wonderful, powerful childhood love spell. And she didn't realize she was doing a love spell, but she was doing a love spell. Wonderful. I love that. Because it really showed that there wasn't anything creepy or any, it was actually very beautiful. That whole scene was very beautiful. And so then um, let me think. What else did I love about the movie? Gosh, there were so many things. I loved that it showed the investigation going on with. I mean, even that was a little bit unrealistic. Because let's face it, the girls would have gone to prison in real life. But they didn't. And so I'm trying to think. Anything else? But I really did like the movie. I thought that it was charming. I thought that it was decently written. I thought that it was decently acted. And I loved that the aunts uh, did this accepting, you know, of who they were. I love that Sally's daughters also did the same thing. In fact, the oldest of her daughters was so offended that Sally wouldn't cast and Sally wouldn't practice. And she made that very clear and made it very obvious, and she was angry about it. And I can understand that. And if you think about it, as any child, we sit there and we wonder why our parents aren't being the great, magnificent people that we believe them to be. And so it's that kind of thing. And she knew that she had the gift, and yet she was not doing it. She was wasting it. I think that that might have been it. But yeah, so all in all, I enjoyed it. I thought that it was um, not negative, not a negative representation of who they were at all. I thought it was more of a realistic representation, just of this family just living their lives in this small community. I also thought that it was a very realistic representation of the reaction of the community. Unfortunately, I didn't think it was a realistic portrayal of the fact that the Owens women have lived in this community their entire lives and generations. The community would have a more accepting attitude towards them. I think they even did in the book. And so the mass hatred for the Owens women that seemed to be, you know, mothers pushing their kids out of the way and stuff like that just didn't seem like it made much sense. I mean, they've been part of that community forever. And sure, they could be hated for, you know, generations and generations, but that's less believable than it is that you're going to have, you know, one bully out of 100 people in the community, and that's it. So, and I'm betting with that small of a community, they've probably, most of them have probably been to the aunts for something. Um, I think that's it. And so the next movie that we'll be talking about is The Craft. I would love to hear if you, you know, differ, if your opinion differs from mine. And I think, yeah, I think this is going to be fun. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment. And don't forget to throw spilled salt over your left shoulder and plant rosemary near your garden gate. And fall in love as often as possible. Talk to you soon.